This is John Howell Essential Cuts, your daily rundown of the best from today's show on 890 WLS.
Hope you had a fine Labor Day weekend, including my next guest. Josh Gerstein joins me. He is Politico's senior legal affairs reporter. You can still follow him on Twitter at Josh Gerstein. Josh, welcome back. How are you, sir?
Hey, John, great to be with you. I hope you had a good weekend, too.
I had a fine weekend. So as you wrote, the finger-pointing among Donald Trump's inner circle has begun. That's not really a surprise. As his 4 criminal cases march on, some of his aides and allies and co-defendants are probably pointing at the former president. Is Mark Meadows getting a little squishy? Is he going to be the next Michael Cohen?
Well, he seems like he's headed in that direction. I don't know if he's going to do a full 180 on Trump and, jump to the other side the way Cohen did. But I think it has a way of fixing the mind. What's the Mark Twain saying? As people see that they're facing these criminal charges and the potential of jail time, they start to think seriously about what their options are. And if the option involves criticizing the former president or appearing to be disloyal to him or turning on him, even throwing him under the bus, rest assured, John, those are all things that their defense lawyers will consider in a bid to help them avoid prison time or, reduce whatever time they might have to serve.
Mark Meadows in the Atlanta case, which probably won't go to trial until who knows when. It's very complicated, lots of co-defendants, obviously. But during his hearing recently in Atlanta, his defense attorney made a big deal about the fact that he really didn't have anything to say of substance on that call from Trump to the Georgia Secretary of State. It was more just facilitating the call. So, I know nothing, I see nothing, I hear nothing, almost a Sergeant Schultz sort of response.
Right. Meadows was on the call. We have a recording of him on it at the beginning and the end. And so, short of him being out having iced tea in the middle of it, it's pretty clear that he was there throughout it. But I thought it was striking. I was sitting in the room, and I thought it was striking that one of Meadows' lawyers explicitly said that Trump was the one doing all the talking on the call. There were a lot of statements by Mr. Trump. The speaking role for Mr. Meadows was quite limited, and even pointed out that Meadows, talked about some kind of settlement of ongoing litigation in Georgia at that time related to the election. And he's not the one, parenthesis, unlike Trump, that was, berating Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State down there, to quote unquote find 11,780 votes. So it seemed to me an effort to pass the buck to Trump. Now, obviously, Meadows' lawyers would just as soon not go to trial at all, shut the case down on this effort they're making to move it to federal court and shut it down. But if that fails, I have no reason to think they won't use a similar strategy of trying to pass the buck to Trump if this does, in fact, go to trial in Atlanta in state court.
Josh, do you think there are discussions between Mark Meadows and his attorneys in as much as they say, well, if Trump becomes president of the United States again, we have to be careful because you may want his pardon? In other words, if you turn on him in the trial to get yourself an easier sentence, lesser sentence, well, you may not be pardonable in his eyes.
Well, I'm sure they're talking about all the possibilities, but remember, this is a state prosecution, so I don't think Trump, even if reelected, would be in a position to legally, grant pardons in that particular case. Obviously, the amount of SWAT that he would have politically if he's reelected to office would be another question. There's already a bunch of Republicans down there that are in very, very uncomfortable positions. But, it's not that Trump is doing everything he can to help all these people either. While he has paid legal fees for some people that worked on his team, Jenna Ellis, who's one of his lawyers who was charged in this Georgia case, who doesn't seem to be a big fan of the former president anymore, she has said that he is not paying legal bills for those that were charged in the criminal case down there. So, that their loyalties may be tested as this process grinds on. We're expecting a hearing tomorrow, John, on the timing of that Georgia case if it does go to trial. Will there be separate trials? Is it even possible to try 19 people at the same time? I would say it's as a practical matter, impossible. So that's something they're going to try to talk through tomorrow afternoon down there in Atlanta.
It seems like with the judgment against Giuliani regarding the money that has to go to the poll workers now, do we know if Trump is helping Rudy Giuliani out financially?
We know that he has helped him with at least some of his legal expenses. Part of the reason Giuliani got in trouble in that case was he said he didn't have enough money to search his own records for emails and so forth that were responsive to this suit brought by the two poll workers, the ones who were accused apparently unfairly of putting ballots under a table in some dastardly way down there. And he, I think, got somewhere on the order of close to $300,000 from one of Trump's political action committees. I mean, as far as I know, none of this money, aside from Trump's defense, none of this money is coming directly out of Trump's pocket. It's coming from various political action committees, essentially coming from Trump's donors to Trump's presidential campaign and his other political ventures.
Yeah, small donors. Josh Gerstein is here, Politico's senior legal affairs reporter. Now, Jack Smith, in the January 6th federal trial in D.C., there's no co-defendants, there's unindicted co-conspirators, but there's nobody there to turn, or am I wrong? Can he still lean on the unindicted co-conspirators?
Right. Well, I mean, there are those 6 unindicted co-conspirators you mentioned, Giuliani and others, and that part of the reason, I think, for naming them, I shouldn't say naming them because their names aren't in the indictment, but you can figure out their identities by their descriptions, and branding them as unindicted co-conspirators is an effort, I think, to overcome various rules of evidence to allow you to put in their hearsay statements that Giuliani made this statement on this day. Normally, you wouldn't be able to introduce it that way in court, but if you say he's a co-conspirator and the judge finds that to be at least plausible, you can get that in. So I think that's part of what they were up to there. I think they may also have been looking to dodge some battles in federal court there about the issue of, I think almost all, if not all, of those unindicted co-conspirators are attorneys, and they would have raised various defenses that, they were just providing legal advice and they're unfairly being held liable for the legal advice that they provided. We're hearing those defenses in the Georgia state case, and I think part of Jack Smith's strategy was that he felt he could brush that to the side by not actually charging those people in that case.
Setting aside the New York Stormy Daniels case, out of the remaining 3, the documents case out of Florida, Jack Smith again, that's complicated because of all the classified documents, and that could run the clock out to who knows where. The Georgia case seems immensely complicated to me with so many defendants. I don't think that's ever going to see the light of day. Does that mean that the only one that could possibly happen before the election would be Jack Smith, D.C.?
I think that it's very possible that one will happen before the election. The judge there seems very intent on going forward with it, and it's kind of, I would describe it as an edgy case, but it's not a super complicated one. There, as you mentioned, there's only one defendant in that case, Trump. So I think it's possible we'll see that one before the election, and I think it's also possible we'll see some part of that Georgia case go forward before the election. It might not be the part involving Trump. We've got at least one defendant, if not more, there insisting that he has a unqualified right to have a speedy trial and to have it about 6 weeks from now. And if he really wants to do that, and the case isn't forced into federal court, he may have a legal right to do that, which will be an interesting preview of a potential Trump trial in that case. But I think that I'd be surprised if the judge would be try to force Trump to go to trial in that in a matter of 6 weeks over his objection.
I don't know. I don't think this is on your beat necessarily, but you no doubt saw it. The Proud Boy that was convicted last week did 10 years in jail. He was not brought up on sedition charges, but he was tearful in front of the judge. And then as the judge said, I'm going to cut what is a recommended sentence in half to only 10 years. There you go. Court's adjourned. He raised his fist and said Trump won. Not a smart move, huh?
Not the best, and not the best for any co-defendants that come after him in other
including today.
In other cases. Yeah. There are already a number of judges that feel burned by defendants in those January 6 cases giving interviews or making comments that they essentially showed fake contrition, and this will only contribute to that. There's hundreds of people lined up to be sentenced behind that particular fellow, and that won't help him not only with that judge, but any of the 20 or so judges in D.C. handling those cases.
Do you know, was the judge still in the courtroom when he did that?
I don't know. I suspect he was, but I don't know. I'm not sitting in the. It literally just happened within the last couple of minutes.
Oh, today's defendant raised a fuss too?
Are you talking about the Terrio sentence?
No, I was
talking about the ones last week.
I was talking about one guy last week who yelled out after he was sentenced. They gave him a hell of a break, half of the recommended time. The judge said, "Okay, I'm buying it." His wife said he was a dummy, effing dummy, and then so they pronounced his sentence, and then he said Trump won as they were taking him out of the courtroom. That I was referencing that. I haven't seen the news on Terrio.
Yeah, I think he was just literally being sentenced as we're speaking. So maybe he didn't show the level of defiance that you're talking about. But we've seen that I've seen it happen in person from several defendants, and we've even seen cases where the defendants were sort of called back in by the judge after the fact, who was very grumpy about their public statements.
Yeah. You don't want to make a judge grumpy, especially before, or let alone after sentencing. Right.
Especially if you're a criminal defendant. Sometimes you can get away with it if you're not. But when you're a criminal defendant, it's generally in your best interest to keep. But, these are judges that have dealt with these guys. This Proud Boys trial went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. So they're intimately familiar with each of these defendants, their attitude and the attitudes of their defense lawyers.
Well, a lot of these guys are going to get a chance to meet new friends, like-minded friends, and get some nice prison tattoos.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's right.
Josh, thank you very much for your time. As always, we'll read more at Politico.com. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Take care, John.
You too,
Bye.
You too.
You're listening to John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
Illinois is solidly blue. So reads a headline in the Chicago Tribune. So why did President Joe Biden's re-election effort spend so much time here this summer? I do not know the answer, but our next guest does. He wrote the article. Rick Pearson is here from the Chicago Tribune. Rick, how are you, sir?
I'm good, but just keep playing that music. I can live with that. That's great.
Are you familiar with the late, great Albert Collins?
I am not at all, but I'm really liking this.
I can't remember what album. Something to do with ice. Ice is in the title of the album, but there's a great cheating song on there. Slow. It's called Too Many Dirty Dishes.
Is it Ice Pickin'?
That's it. I think. Is that an Alligator
That's an
Records?
album. Oh, Stand By.
Yeah, I think so. And Albert Collins comes home. This is in the song. And there's too many dirty dishes in the sink. And he's onto something there. But the whole album's terrific. The whole album's great. Just great.
Can confirm Alligator Records.
Yes, Alligator Records. The name of the album is?
Ice Pickin'.
That's it. Ice Pickin'. That's it. Love the tune.
No G, apostrophe. It's N apostrophe. Pickin'.
I never drop my G's. Ice Pickin' is the name of the album. Well, Rick, thank you very much, sir. So he was here to tout Bidenomics, which I have to tell you, with all the negativity that comes with just essentially half of the world liking the guy and half of the world hating the guy, why you'd name anything after yourself is beyond me. Same thing with Obama and Obamacare. But that being said, it's now drilled in. Then the vice president was here to drill it in even further. Why Illinois, considering it's deeply blue?
Well, I just wondered the same thing. It's like every month, well, actually in a period of 1 month, you had Kamala Harris here 3 times. Biden kicked things off in June. We just had the First Lady was in town for the pre-Labor Day rally. And it's like Illinois shouldn't be on your worry list. And in talking to some various Democratic strategists and consultants, they said it's not a matter of necessarily worrying about Illinois after Trump lost by 17% percentage points back-to-back in the last 2 presidential elections here. It's not worrying about Illinois so much as it's just concern about trying to get the base rallied in a supportive state at an early point before you have to go and hit all of those other critical states. Still, I think the fact that there is a concern about warming up the Democratic base in Illinois means that if this is Illinois going on, what's going on in the rest of the country? And so, there's the fact of warming up the base in an early state. There's also the fact, too, and this is true for presidential candidates in both parties, Chicago's a big ATM for politicians.
Yeah. Donor-rich state. Donor-rich state, yes. There's a donor class here. You're right.
So you can always expect when it's time to refill the coffers a little bit that there'll be at least a brief stop in Chicago. And if you're going to do a fundraiser, you might as well do something as a political rally on top of it.
Being a vice president is always kind of a touchy gig because you want to be supportive. You do not want to outshine the boss. That being said, Harris she seems to have booted her chances here in this administration. Does she have enough time or ability to rehabilitate herself?
Well, that's one of the factors that these people told me about her being here in Chicago so many times was part of an effort to try to rebuild that imagery around here that Republicans have been building as just, as a total negative for the ticket, particularly in conjunction with the questions about Biden's health, Biden's age. So she comes to Chicago 3 times, and also it was a very concerted effort to address specific audiences. It was, in Chicago was Operation Push and outreach to the black community. Then it was a national convention of Latino leaders, and then it was a matter of the gun safety crowd. So each with a very key Democratic constituency in an effort to boost her credentials. Now, that having been said, she does have a habit of sometimes flubbing words. At the Operation Push event, she couldn't pronounce the word apostolic in naming the church she was at. And I think in January, before it was Bidenomics, at an infrastructure repair event down on the Chicago River, she referred to the Cook County Board president as Tony Periwinkle. So, there's still a lot of building that she has to do, but the negatives are a constant refrain from the Republicans.
Do the Democrats realize that they're not going to run a campaign that's necessarily for Biden, but it's going to have to be against Trump?
They know it. I think it's just a matter of not trying to engage that contest too early. I think they know there's a time and a place for it. It's kind of like how the White House and Biden hasn't said anything about Trump's legal problems or raised that issue.
Right. What do you think of the mugshot? Handsome guy.
It looks like how Donald Trump would look if Donald Trump told him you're fired. Yeah, that's how it would look like.
He was practiced, you know that.
Oh, of course. Well, he had to. He had to have gone through all kinds of poses for practice. He's selling coffee mugs.
Well, that's his brand. I'm a tough guy.
Right. So, but you're going to hear. And the White House is kind of softening into going after Trump by using the phrase, this contest, this race is going to be about the survival of democracy, and that's kind of their backward way of trying to refer to January 6th and the insurrection behind it.
Talking here with Rick Pearson from the Chicago Tribune. So the president placed a rather large buy with NFL football. That was news today. Any surprise there? He's reaching out again kind of towards the middle of America to try, and he's spent a lot of time with union people, so on and so forth. The Democratic Party without what used to be the Democratic Party is really hampered, isn't it? Let me rephrase that. That's a stupid question. I guess what I'm saying is that they have their constituencies, but it's not what the Democratic Party used to be. A lot of that core of what used to be a Democrat has moved to the Republican Party. Is it worth their efforts in trying to get it back? Betting on the NFL.
Well, I think it's imperative that Democrats have to try to find a way back to reach those people, the old Reagan Democrats, I think.
The bungalow belt.
Way to phrase it.
The bungalow belt.
You've seen, like, for downstate Illinois, where you used to have these very heavy union towns with manufacturing and coal mining, that those jobs are gone. There's no union down there anymore, and so they've gone all Republican. Those used to be solid Democratic areas, and the Democrats have gotten away from that. There's no doubt about it. And if you talk to Democrats privately too, there's always the concern that how much further left should this party be going? That every step you take left, are you moving too far that you're losing those people in the center?
You are.
And that's where a lot of the gains that the Democrats have made, particularly here in the collar counties, particularly among suburban women, they're not on the far left, but between Republican policies that they don't like,
right.
They find a more affinity with Democrats. But they're at that far edge too.
Which party do you think has done a better job of marginalizing its own crazies, the Republicans or the Democrats?
Oh boy, I don't know that either one has. I mean, I think to some extent that there's just a fear of doing so, and on both parties, and with Trump, it's just a fear of alienating his base. And anything that the people that support him, complete fear of that. And with Democrats, there hasn't
enthusiasm gap. They have an enthusiasm gap problem with the Republicans. The Republicans, every single one of those Trumpers are going to come out and vote for Trump. But that's not true. The same people that voted for Biden even 4 years ago or coming up on 4 years ago. They need to be excited.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think it needs to be at some point. I think Democrats are going to have to realize that there's a need to kind of rein in on from the far left to rein in some things
and get Joe Biden. Use any excuse you want, but I don't see the man standing for re-election. I mean, I know that they seem to be all in on this. It just doesn't seem to make much sense to me because as Nikki Haley and others are now just running not against Joe Biden, they're running against President Harris.
Right. And and there's concern among young Democrats too, as again part of that enthusiasm factor of why is it an old man? Why is it the old man again? Mm-hmm. And the party itself has gotten younger.
Yep.
But this is also endemic throughout Washington too. When you look at I mean, I couldn't even imagine what the average age of a U.S. senator is.
Well, you heard that cut that Kim played in her newscast, and Mitch McConnell on the floor today. Woof. Feinstein, and it's a mess. You got to go.
Well, that was back in the day in Springfield, the Illinois Senate was jokingly referred to as the nursing home.
Democracy. It's not perfect. It's the best we have.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Maybe I'll see you at your corner stool a little bit later on, and have a great evening. We appreciate your time as always. We'll read more in the Tribune, Rick.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, and I hope everybody had a great Labor Day weekend.
Your favorite Buffett song in memory.
I got to tell you, truly, I mean, Margaritaville, without a doubt, but the memory is him singing the national anthem at the 1984 Cubs game.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just such a great memorial to Steve Goodman on top of it. I mean, it was just a moment, a speechless moment at a baseball game.
Was that against the Padres?
Marlins. I think it was Marlins, but I'm not sure.
All right. Yeah, I just played a little bit of that for my listeners just a few minutes ago. Yeah, that's a great memory of Buffett in 1984. Too bad about the Cubs. That's Steve Garvey.
Well, that was then. This is now.
Are you all excited? They're pretty hot, aren't they?
I'm amazed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tale of two cities.
Train.
Tale of two cities this year.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Rick. I'm woefully late again, so I'm getting the signal. I must go. I must shut up.
All right.
Take care.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
This is John Howell Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
Grover Norquist, I think I talked to him a couple years ago, as he was on his way to or just finished attending Burning Man. A lot of people like this BM Fest. And after a weekend of rain that turned roads into a muddy mess out there in Nevada, I'm glad to be in Nevada, Attendees of the annual Burning Man Fest were told that they had to shelter in place, deluge, no way in, no way out. They're now saying it wasn't as bad as the headlines made it sound. Let's start there with Alex Stone, ABC News correspondent. We love going to Alex in L.A. for an update. Well, what exactly goes on at the BM Fest? Can you bring us up to date on what exactly it is? It's not just a series of concerts. Is it an art festival? Is it a...
Generally, does anybody really know what goes on at Burning Man? No, it's not a music festival at all. It's an art celebration where they ride around on light up art things through the desert, and they burn the man, the big wooden burning man, and burn other things and celebrate art and culture and togetherness and play out in the desert. And they had bars and drinking and everybody making food for one another. They create Black Rock City in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't exist until Burning Man comes together on a dry lake bed. And the dry lake bed is the problem, that when it rained, it didn't even rain that much, but it was about 3 years worth of rain in the short amount of time. And then it turned into this muddy mess, roads wiped out, and folks were told to ration food and water. It sounded pretty dire, but that was kind of the global headline of it. But the rain moved out, the roads were cleared, and by yesterday afternoon and then today, the burners, as they're called, started the very slow trek out, 8 to 12 hours, to slowly go over desert land and muddy roads that have now been cleared. And the burners are telling us that the media headlines, that they were not what they were really experiencing, and they were having a very good time at Burning Man, and that they came together. And this is Kiana Beale. She's at Burning Man.
As dramatic as people have made it, it actually hasn't been that terrible. If there's ever a group of people to get stuck with, this is the one.
And she says, oh, you can't leave thing, that most of the burners didn't plan on leaving until last night or today. It was originally supposed to end yesterday, and people were going to be there anyway. They weren't going to go anywhere. With the original end date only being a day ago. Angela Peacock is there and heading out today.
I'm tired. I'm ready to go. But it was a lot of fun. It was totally worth it. Even with the rain, it was an amazing experience.
And then last night they burned the man, and that one night later than normal. So they were able to get through all of it. The one thing they said was the mental aspect of knowing you couldn't get out if you needed to. But most had planned to be there the whole time. But that was the one thing, and Angela Peacock saying.
I did hear rumors where a couple people did freak out a little bit, like feeling trapped. But they were, comforted and reassured.
But a lot of the Burning Man attendees say that they're all about self-reliance. That is one of the core values of Burning Man, that you come in with everything to live on your own and off the grid during that time. So most people were fine. Now, the two, well, really three bad parts of it, the long trek out, the exodus right now. We understand the porta potties got really bad because they couldn't bring in trucks because the roads were closed to clean them for many, many days. So the porta potty situation became quite dire. And there was one death at Burning Man on Saturday, but 80,000 people were there. That we don't know what that death was. The sheriff's department hasn't given any more details in rural Nevada. It could have been a medical emergency that had they been able to get out of there, maybe they got some help or something else. We don't know what it was. But the people who were there say they had no idea about that. They didn't see any action, anything indicating that anybody had gotten hurt or had any kind of an accident, and they had a really good time.
If they were expecting 3 years of rain in a 24-hour period and they're in a lake bed, dried lake bed, why didn't they have some warnings and move?
It's a good question. All of the West was kind of caught off guard by the rain that came in over the weekend. It was originally going to be like a 10% chance of rain, then it became a 40%, then a 7%, and then it rained all weekend, all over L.A., and deluge over Las Vegas, and they had major flooding, and then
I saw
Nevada.
The Vegas. I saw the Vegas video.
Kind of unexpected, but yeah, I don't know if they would have moved anyway. It's kind of, we'll get through it, and they're going to have fun.
So 80,000 people. Are there just thousands of RVs that look like they're from Breaking Bad, just parked out in the desert?
No, a lot of them are really nice. There's a lot of really wealthy people who go to this. A kid I went to high school with many years ago, he is now a very wealthy anesthesiologist in the Bay Area. He goes every year with his wife and their young baby. And
young
it's
kid?
A lot of,
what's in it for a young kid except just either, a deluge or rain?
the rides out there that people have built, and and hang out in the RV. No, there's a lot of money. People fly in. They have chopper and plane rides to bring people in. So you got a weird mix of very wealthy from the Bay Area and from elsewhere, but very wealthy primarily from the Bay Area, and those who hitchhike their way in and they've got a backpack on and they just want to hang. It's
Who makes money at this?
It's a good question. I don't know. I believe the Burning Man organizers. It's a nonprofit organization, so I don't know where the money goes. I don't know.
Okay,
I mean, it's one big festival of probably a lot of substances going on out in the desert.
Is there an uptick in VD after Burning Man every year?
That's a good question.
Is there guys out there with just satchels full of penicillin selling on the black market?
It might be needed.
God, I just don't get it. I mean, I try to avoid crowds at this point. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, something like that to me. They were enjoying the mud. All I would be is wanting a shower really badly. I don't know.
You get all the great assignments.
Is, the Marriott or the Hyatt. I'll be there.
You get natural disasters. You get horrific events. Like we saw recently, you were dispatched to Hawaii for a horrific event. And then you cover Burning Man where nobody can really figure out what they're doing.
Yeah, and why they're out there. They put themselves into it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess next year we'll see.
There you go.
All right, Alex, thanks so much.
Thanks, John. Later.
Take care. Alex Stone out in Los Angeles trying to explain to us Burning Man.
You're listening to John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.
Freedom of Information Act gave a terrific reporter, Zach Roth, he works for the State Journal, gave him access to all the contracts that we as taxpayers essentially made with the acts that played the Illinois State Fair. And lots and lots of time spent each year as we take care of the world's most famous musical artists who allow who make themselves available for our Illinois State Fair for 10 days of great world-class entertainment designed to dazzle and stir the senses. But providing just about everything they want is a full-time job. In fact, it's a job that takes weeks and months to fulfill. Years and years ago, I worked for a promoter up in Grand Rapids, and he would hire lots of different entertainment, and he was philosophically against providing anything for any of the artists backstage. So we would routinely have contracts sent to us, and this is pre-interweb, so they'd be sent up, Federal Express, what have you, and he would routinely sign the contract, sign a deposit check, send it back, but he'd tear the rider off and throw it in the trash. So when the contract was returned to the booking agency, whether it was in Nashville or New York or L.A. or wherever it was, Chicago, then the representative of the act, the booking agency, would have the dilemma of whether to cash the check and accept the contract as is or get into it about the rider. He hated providing anything backstage for artists. His philosophy was, and I tend to agree with him, we're paying you a boatload of cash, bring your own Coca-Cola. All right, so here are some of the more interesting things that Zach Roth from the State Journal found regarding some of the acts. And I'm only going to mention the acts that I recognize. Saturday, August 12th, the Doobie Brothers were in concert. I like the Doobie Brothers, always have. They were paid $600,000 guaranteed, plus 85% of the box office receipts, over $690,000 in net sales. I don't know what they finally walked away with, but at least $600,000 for probably a 90-minute set. Nice work if you can get it. They also needed a wide range of dining options, including an omelet station, a meat and deli tray, and an international culinary flair charcuterie board for dinner. I don't picture the Doobie Brothers as needing that, but apparently they do. Alanis Morissette, she was paid $750,000 guaranteed. She wanted various nut-related spreads, and also a small tub of organic cashew butter in her dressing room. She also wanted a home-cooked dinner for her crew, entrees, including pork, beef, fish, and 3 sides for each. Also, she's very particular about water, no desante. REO Speedwagon, Illinois' own, paid a flat guarantee of only $150,000. And they didn't want anything in particular, but they were very particular food and beverage. But they were very particular regarding nobody sells REO Speedwagon merchandise but us. If we catch anybody on site selling anything with our logo, our name, what have you on it, we confiscate it, you're out. Tim McGraw, $750,000 guaranteed. His opener only received $5,000. Wow. Giving the kid a break, apparently. You can play in front of my show, but you're not going to make much money. Tim McGraw has 10 pages of rider suggestions for meals and dressing rooms. Suggested meals including a grilled cheese bar for lunch, made-to-order pasta bar for dinner. For his dressing room specifically, in addition to providing him with 6 cans of Coke, he also must have 4 Muscle Milk protein drinks, the intense vanilla flavor. He prefers healthy options that will not leave his crew in a fried or processed food coma. Tim McGraw, he's done well for himself, that's for sure. And Nelly, who once did a duet, I think, with Tim McGraw, he was paid a flat $150,000 for his Sunday show at the Illinois State Fair. Nelly does not want any DJ or opening act ever to play any of his music, either in entirety or excerpts, before he takes the stage. He must approve all music and set lists played before his performances, or else. Also, fish or other seafood before the shows, and Cajun sautéed shrimp is preferred. So there's just a few. If you want to read the rest of them, there's some really fascinating items in here. Zach Roth is the writer at the State Journal. You can read more. You know, artists are very, very particular.
I can't no sleep. I got to get to my rest. I'm an artist.
I am an artist. And all high-strung performers, whether in the executive suite or on stage, they want what they want. And if you're an underling, you better provide it.
I don't understand why it's so difficult to confirm an appointment.
No, I'm so sorry, Miranda. I actually did confirm last night.
Details of your incompetence do not interest me. Tell Simone I'm not going to prove that girl that she sent me for the Brazilian layout. I asked for clean, athletic, smiling. She sent me dirty, tired, and paunchy. And RSVP, yes, to the Michael Kors party. I want the driver to drop me off at 9:30 and pick me up at 9:45 sharp. Then call Natalie at Glorious Foods and tell her no for the 40th time no.
I think this is Celine Dion. Am I right? Is that Celine Dion? I'm pretty sure it is.
Don't want duckwads. I want torts filled with warm rhubarb compote. And then call my ex-husband and remind him that parent-teacher conference is at Dalton tonight. And then call my husband. Ask him to please meet me for dinner at that place I went to with Massimo.
I'm sorry. That was a mistake. I've been told this is Reba McEntire.
So tell Richard I saw all the pictures that he sent for that feature on the female paratroopers, and they're all so deeply unattractive. Is it impossible to find a lovely, slender female paratrooper? No. Am I reaching for the stars here? No. Not really. Also, I need to see all the things that Nigel has pulled for Gwyneth's second cover try. I wonder if she's lost any of that weight yet.
I'm sorry. I've been told this is Elton John. My mistake.
Who is that?
Nobody. Well, Human Resources sent her up about the new assistant job, and I was sort of pre-interviewing her for you, but she's hopeless and totally wrong.
Well, clearly I'm going to have to do that myself, because the last 2 you sent me were completely inadequate, so send her in.
Coming up next at 4:21,
That's
Trump's...
all.
I'm sorry, pardon me. I'm fired.
John Howell, Essential Cuts. Check back every weekday for another episode of John Howell, Essential Cuts on 890 WLS.